Welcome to Lombardi's Legends podcast, and always brought to you by Leaf Spirits Vodka, the best vodka in Wisconsin or anywhere. And Wags, we're making cocktails. What do you have in store today?
Yeah, we're going to do a Wisco Mule. So to start off with, we're going to do a ice-filled copper mug, and always using our Leaf Spirits Vodka, 1.5 ounces. And this is a really simple drink. You can do this at any tailgate. And then we're going to do a little splash of Cointreau or Grand Marnier. And then just fill with your favorite ginger beer, about 4 ounces. Garnish with a lime. And even when the kids are screaming in the tailgate, drink tastes delicious. Here you go.
Let me try. Anybody who's a parent knows you got to have one once in a while.
Go Pack, go.
Go back, go.
Traveling to Buffalo, take on the Bills. And Dane, how are you doing this evening?
I'm good, buddy. I'm good. Good to see you. Excited to talk a little bit of Packers football a little bit later than normal. But I'm doing all right, and I'm eager for this week's matchup after 3 straight weeks of pretty significant disappointments as Packer fans. All of a sudden, we've got one of the best teams in football, the Buffalo Bills, on the schedule. So I'm kind of curious as we take flight here, what some of these matchups are going to look like, and how the Packers are going to be able to handle this team. Already getting some comments dropping in. This is going to be brutal. So Wags, what's our reasons for optimism? And let's just get into this darn thing. We're playing a really good football team. We're playing really bad football. Is this a recipe for disaster?
Well, the good news is at least we won't be disappointed by anything that happens this week. So
Fair.
That's my glass half full response. There's no reason for anyone to think the Packers can go into this game. As crazy as it is to say, I don't think I've ever said that in the podcast.
Never.
With Aaron Rodgers under center. Well, maybe when we had some Hundley games a couple years ago, I may not have been too optimistic. But there's nothing on paper that says that there's any advantages for the Packers. We'll get into this, but I believe Buffalo is still number one by DVOA, both offensively and defensively. They're coming off of a bye. They've just really dominated teams that haven't been playing well. So Buffalo at times can have letdowns and play down a level, but against teams that they can overmatch, they will just run up the score. And that's been that way for the last couple of seasons. So if the Packers are going to have any shot in this one, they're going to have to raise their level of play much, much, much higher than what we've seen from them, not only in the last 3 weeks, but frankly, this whole season.
So let's start right into this. Josh Allen. He's about as good as they get right now in the National Football League at the quarterback position. He'll gut you through the air. He'll get you with his legs. He does absolutely everything that you could ask for a quarterback. He's young. He's gifted. He's smart. He does it. He's developing. And scary enough for the league, he might still be getting better, which is a frightening proposition. So, the Packers taking on Allen. Wags, where do you see, his strengths, and do you see weaknesses in his game, and how do you see the Packers trying to contain this guy to the best of their ability?
Well, they're going to have to be physical with the receivers. And so the one thing that I would say is that, what we've done with Jair Alexander the last couple of weeks is a recipe that we're going to have to take, replicate, and expand on. I know that Rasul Douglas, he came close last week so many times to making a big game-changing play, wasn't quite able to do it, unfortunately. And this season hasn't quite had the level of play that we saw from him last year. But he's been physical. So I think I would like to use him to get really physical with whoever he's matched up against on the line of scrimmage. And I think Eric Stokes as well. Now, this is not probably a game, fortunately, that you're looking at a team that has a really strong rushing attack. So Josh Allen himself is the strong rushing attack for this Buffalo
Right.
Bills offense. So, there's nobody that's going to really scare you too much. The Packers can't have a letdown there, because if they let the Bills, of all teams, really start pounding the football in the rushing attack, that's not a good sign for this defense. So I think, really we're going to have to see, and I'm talking about the corners, but then on the back end too, with Darnell Savage and Adrian Amos. And I think Adrian Amos in particular has raised his level of play the last couple of weeks, along with Jair Alexander. So they're really going to have to be on top of their game too, because this is a offense in the Bills with Josh Allen that can throw the ball vertically very accurately, and they've got the guys to run and get the football. So we're going to need to give them a little bit of help while we're being physical with these guys at the line of scrimmage, because if you can only jam them for so long, and then they're going to try to get off of that, get a release, and try to stretch it downfield. So I think it's going to start with the guys on the back end. I realize that a lot of times we talk about the defensive line and getting that rush going and who wins in the trenches, and they've got to do their job too. But to me, this week, it's going to be all about our secondary and what they're able to do to try to nullify some of the matchups and some of the things that this Bills offense like to do, just from a rhythm standpoint. But Dane, I do want to ask you though, when it comes to Josh Allen, what do you think they do? I'm mentioning his ability to run the ball.
Right.
Is there anything that you think they might do to try to, contain that part of Josh Allen's game? Because not only can he just kill you throwing the ball, but he's turned into a really good player. Early in his career, he made his bones as a runner, and that's a part of his game that's just as dynamic as it's ever been.
Well, I'll tell you what, fantastic comment from David Henderson, saying right now Tim Allen might be able to play quarterback and beat us. So I won't go that far, because I think the defense has been considerably better than the offense this year, but love the comment. I'll tell you what, I think if we're looking at weaknesses in Josh Allen's game, it's very likely the accuracy. Sometimes he can make some of those decisions. He's a good decision maker, but sometimes the ball just leaves his hand, and it probably remains to be desired if you're a Buffalo Bills fan. So yes, he's very deadly with his legs, Wags, but I think in the last couple of years, while he can still get you on the ground, I think that there's been a concentrated effort from this coaching staff and from Josh to try to play a little bit more in the pocket. Now, that's not to say he won't still take off, because he will. But when he's trying to do those types of things, once in a while, you'll still see that ball go the other way, because Josh lets the ball rip a little bit and tries to fit it into tight windows, and maybe doesn't quite have that down. So he's got good arm strength, he's got good legs, and he can be very accurate. But at times when he's inaccurate, he can be very inaccurate, Wags. So maybe that's the silver lining. Not everybody's got holes in their game. The longer you play in the National Football League, the more that those teams try to highlight those weaknesses. And I think with Allen, if the Packers can apply pressure early, but concentrated pressure where he doesn't flush out of the pocket and doesn't just have open field in front of him, and he has to sit in the pocket and make throws, I think that's the Packers' best chance this week. To force an interception, force incomplete passes. So maybe not pinning the ears back, so to speak, all the time, but finding ways to pressure up the middle wherever possible, where Allen's going to have to, kind of like set his feet and throw the football. I think that we can maybe find chances in that respect. But man, it's hard to pick holes in Josh Allen's game right now, especially the way he's been playing. He's just a really strong football player.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on something. Kenny Clark has garnered a lot of attention from opposing offensive lines. He's getting double teamed an awful lot, but this might need to be his best game of the season. I mean, heck, we need everyone to have probably their best game of the season. One thing I will say is the Bills do protect Josh Allen very well. He's only been sacked 9 times this year, which is the lowest number in the league to this point of the season. So it was good to see that Rashawn Gary returned to practice today as he's making his way through the concussion protocol. But it's going to be tough sledding to get pressure on Josh Allen, and that's just what they need rhythmically to be able to throw the football. So they've got a really nice combination going where they're protecting Josh. He's able to stress defenses when things break down, or if he has a designed run. And then, oh, by the way, he's able to throw the ball downfield at a really good clip. So we have our work cut out for us.
Yes.
There's no doubt about that. But if we can get anything, where we can get Josh off his feet a little bit, and he's got to move around, I think that's where the accuracy could start to drop just a little bit. So it's not going to be an easy task, but even if we're not getting sacks every time we get home, if we can make him move his feet and have to throw on the run, I think, he's still good enough to make those throws a lot of the time. But to your point, Dane, I think if there's anything that we can do to just take some slight rhythm and timing off of this Buffalo passing game, that's what we're going to need to do to try to contain him and slow him down a little bit.
Wait, should we be worried about the you mentioned a little bit here, but, with the concussion protocol, looks like a limited participant today. I feel like sometimes these head injuries can be hard to gauge, right? And you might not even know until Sunday morning how's he feeling. So I'm kind of curious, what's your take on that? I am encouraged, of course, about the limited participation today on a Thursday.
I mean, we don't know. He hasn't been cleared yet, but if he's practicing today, I think that's about as good of an indication as we could get that he's on track to be cleared here by Saturday and ready to go on Sunday night. Mm-hmm. So we'll find out. It's not without reason that he didn't practice Wednesday and is still in the concussion protocol. So certainly that would be, one more big blow to the Packers' chances of pulling off a miracle here. But, I think the fact that he practiced, Dane, is probably a pretty good indication. Just looking at Dane, I want to ask you about these wide receivers. We're talking still about the pass game, but talking a lot about Josh Allen. We're very familiar with Stefon Diggs, but they've got some other guys here. But starting with Stefon Diggs, how do you think the Packers are going to treat this wide receiver and this core of guys that can really get after it as well?
Yeah, I mean, Diggs is an animal. I was giddy when he was no longer in Minnesota, when the Vikings traded him. I mean, could you imagine right now Diggs and Jefferson on the same team in Minnesota? That would be a house of horrors to try to face that. So I have a ton of respect for Stefon Diggs, and I think it starts and ends with Jaire Alexander this week. Last week I thought Jaire, up until the end, had a pretty good game against McLaurin, who's very good over there in Washington. And then, near the end of the game, we saw a couple plays where McLaurin got the best of Jaire. But this week, yet again, Wags, I want to see the Packers be aggressive and make their best players beat our best players, because I think Jaire is good enough to go toe-to-toe with Diggs a number of times throughout the game. That doesn't mean he's not going to get help over the top. That doesn't mean, we're not going to give different looks. But I think the Packers' best chance at success for the remainder of the year is to stay aggressive defensively and play your best cover corner on the best wide receiver. Let him, run all over the field. Let's not get cute with this. Let's have Jaire man up on Stefon Diggs more often than not, and then throw the kitchen sink at the rest of the team with the rest of the defenders. But, we paid Jaire a lot of money. We expect him to be a number one shutdown corner. We know what he can do. I want to see him go out there and do that. Do you agree with me, or what's your take? Do you think... I think that, playing off has been not proven fruitful. Overall, the defense has played, I think, better over these last few weeks when they've been more aggressive. So I'm really leaning in on that right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's unfortunately these other guys are good enough to really have some big games. I think a couple weeks ago, Gabe Davis had 2 or 3 touchdowns, and so I mean, Josh is not afraid to get other guys involved as well. So it's just not an easy task. So I think it's not just Jaire Alexander against Stefon Diggs that'll get the attention. That's the marquee matchup in terms of those guys on the outside. But we need everyone in this secondary to just be on the same page this week. Those communication issues seem to have dwindled a little bit over the last few weeks, but we still seen some at times, some breakdowns. And to be quite honest with you, Packers haven't faced an offense anywhere close to as good as what Buffalo is. They've played some pretty bad wide receivers and quarterbacks, and that's some cause for concern. So even though I agree that the offense is more concerning than the defense right now, that we're going to find out a heck of a lot about this defense this week as well.
Yeah, and the other guy, I mean, we should definitely circle for this offensively. They're from their wide receivers. I think Isaiah McKenzie is a big play kind of guy. Gabe Davis, I think, gets a lot of run, but McKenzie can take that ball to the house as well. So they've got a lot of threats. This is a Super Bowl contending team in Buffalo. So we've definitely going to have our hands full on the road on primetime TV against a full throttled offense. Wags, Dave wrote in the comments, curious about play more snaps for Enagbare. JJ Enagbare, of course, the fifth round draft pick who's been getting more and more pass rushing opportunities and has been showing up on tape. So whether Rashawn Gary is up or down this week, I'm expecting Rashawn to go personally. I got to think Enagbare is going to continue to get that work. Do you agree with that? Because he's looked too good at times to stay off the field. He's been very good in the last couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean, we need to maximize the snaps that Rashawn and Preston get out there. And thankfully, JJ's been out there playing some pretty good snaps as well. So whatever we can get from him, if he continues to progress and can have an impact on this game, that would certainly be benefit to his Packers defense. Dane, one other thing before we move over away from this Buffalo offense versus Packer defense, I'm kind of curious your take on what type of impact we could expect in the middle with Quay Walker. And of course, last week we got a huge game. I'm blanking out right now. Sorry.
Devondre?
From Devondre. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, so this isn't a team that likes to run the ball all that often. So how do we utilize them? Is Quay going to still get the same number of snaps, or could he get less snaps and Packers want to roll an extra DB out there?
I think they might roll an extra DB out. As good as Walker was last week, just looking at the matchup, I think that the Packers might dare Buffalo to run the football more. And I think that Devondre Campbell's played really good football solo when he's had the ability to do so this year. So Wags, I wouldn't be shocked at all to see that. But I would also say that when Walker's out there, and I do think he'll still get a fair amount of snaps, don't be surprised if we see him rushing the quarterback again. We saw him do it last week. He played really well in that role, I thought, in the limited looks that he had. I think he can make an impact on this defense doing so. So when we see Walker back out there, I do believe this Packers coaching staff is still trying to feel out the best ways to utilize this young inside linebacker to give him the best chance at positive impact. So I do think he won't be on the field quite as much probably this week as last week because of the matchup and the matchup issues with the wide receivers and what Josh Allen does. But do not be surprised when Walker's out there, he's going after that quarterback some as well. But I'm expecting Walker to still get 25, 30 snaps, if not more, of course, depending on how much the defense is out there. So he's still going to have the opportunity to make impact plays for this Packers defense this week, just maybe slightly less than in the previous couple weeks.
Yeah, that'll be interesting if they go with Keyshawn Nixon as a corner or if it's maybe Ruby Ford as a third safety. But I agree with you, Dan. I think that gives us a little bit more speed, and that's nothing against Quay Walker. But you've got to put the 11 out on the field that matches up best with the opposition and gives your defense a chance to try to contain and slow them down. So while he'll still get snaps, certainly he may not get quite as much run as he's gotten in other games this season. Okay, Dane, anything else on the Buffalo offense versus Packers defense?
No, I don't think so. I think, why don't we pay some bills, and then let's talk about this Packers offense and what we're going to be facing against Buffalo.
All right. So we are going to talk about DraftKings Sportsbook. And Of course, what we've been setting up is a scenario that you definitely don't want to have to deal with. But just imagine your kicker, Mason Crosby, lining up for an onside kick. The chances of regaining possession are slim. Stakes are high. Tension are higher. We're in Buffalo. We have a chance to steal a win from the jaws of defeat. He kicks, and you watch as the ball lands. And that's just what every play is like with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, and their unbeatable offers. So right now, new customers can take advantage of any $5 NFL bet and get $200 in free bets if your team wins.
Yeah, check it out, Wags. In addition to the usual bets, everyone, that's all of you folks, can boost their winnings with DraftKings stepped up same game parlays. There's a lot of folks that are going to be betting against the Packers this week. Do not count them out in your parlay card. We never do. But Wags, this is what's so great about DraftKings, and this is what's so great about their stepped up same game parlays. To make things even sweeter, as if you needed to, you can throw down on stepped up same game parlays once per game day all season long.
Yep, absolutely. So, folks, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code TPPN to get $200 in free bets if your team wins. Just place a $5 bet on any football game only at DraftKings Sportsbook using code TPPN. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. All right. So, Dane, I think moving over to the Packer offense versus this Bills defense, I think it's hard to get into the matchups without first acknowledging how beat up this Packer offense is. We know that Aaron Rodgers is still dealing with that thumb, and got three more receivers on the injury report. And it looks like Allen Lazard, very unlikely to go this week. So he's probably going to be out. Sammy Watkins and Christian Watson both practicing, but of course Christian Watson's missed the last couple of games, and Sammy just came off the IR last week, and it looked a little rusty early, especially. But Dane, what is the cure here? We need like a cure both in the medical side of things as well as the play on the field as far as the passing offense is concerned. So it's going to start there, and I'm going to turn it over to you. And let's just say that if Sammy Watkins and Christian Watson are able to go, what do you expect the Packers to be able to do passing the ball with a little bit of a beat up wide receiver corps?
It's going to be tough sledding, man. I'm just going to be completely blunt about this. They're depleted. There's no doubt about that. David Bakhtiari also did not practice today. I don't know what that means for his chances on Sunday. But Wags, I look at this Buffalo Bill. This is an offense. I don't have to tell anybody listening to this Packer podcast that has struggled significantly in completing footballs downfield. Aaron's had challenges. The receivers have challenges. We've seen all year long that there's just not a lot of cohesion between the wide receivers and the quarterback play. And this week, Wags, this is a really tough matchup. And I look at the corners and really their safeties too. Their safety play of Jordan Poyer, DeMar Hamlin, those two guys, in addition to their cornerbacks in Buffalo, are just ball hawking guys. They're guys that get in your face. They jam you at the line of scrimmage. They're aggressive. Going against a young receiving core, even if Christian Watson goes and it's Romeo Doubs, I mean, I promise you, they're licking their chops this week against young rookie wide receivers. So this is an aggressive defensive front. But looking at the cornerback room for Buffalo, these young receivers are going to have to grow up really fast on the road. It's going to be a loud environment. Bills fans are smart fans. They know the Packers' offensive struggles so far this year. So this is a Packers offensive unit that, being disjointed for a good portion of the year, this is not a matchup you really want to be seeing against Buffalo, because I think that they're going to be coming at it. They're going to be coming at it fast. If I had all the answers to how to cure the Packers' woes in passing the ball, I'd probably be coaching for them at this point. We really haven't been able to figure it out. But Wags, I hope that it's quick passing game yet again. It's trying to utilize the running game, but also I'm trying to find the intermediary play and maybe exploiting the interior of this Bills defense with somebody like a Robert Tonyan and some of the other tight end play, and try to get them worked in the receiving game even more than they already have been.
Yeah, these guys play fast. They run downhill,
Yes.
and they're very aggressive, both on the front seven and this secondary. I will say Hamlin obviously is coming in, second year guy. He's a backup, but he's playing now because Micah Hyde had that neck injury and is on the IR. So he likes to come up and hit. He's a physical guy. So more specifically, more granularly, I think with the Packers, we say it every week. We're going to keep saying it. We're beating the dead horse. Need to stick with the run. And in order to get this pass game going, I really think it's going to have to come through some play action. They're not going to be able to do that effectively if they abandon the run or don't get a running game going at all. So it's going to be really incumbent, I think, on the Bills to have to come up and respect the run. And if you can bait Hamlin in particular, but really any of these guys, they play very aggressively into maybe some of those play action looks, then that can get them slightly off balance. Now, it's easier said than done because they've got the guys in the front, starting with Von Miller, to really disrupt some of that as well. So it's not going to be an easy thing to do. But I think if this Packer offensive line can build on what they did last week and really keep some pretty good protection, this is taking it up another level. But if they can build on what they did last week, let's get the run game going and just try to stay in the game, keep the tempo slower, keep that Buffalo offense off the field as long as you possibly can, even if you're not putting points up every series. Dane, we need to move the chains on some of these series. We can't have these series where we're going 3 and out and we're throwing 2 passes. And, I get it, game time versus actual time, and Coach McClure can talk about that, but when 24 seconds of game time comes off the clock and the defense needs to go right back out on the field, that's not going to work this week. So this Packer offense needs to, this isn't a ball control, field position type game against Buffalo. You're going to have to put up some points. Don't get me wrong, but they do need to, even if they're not putting up points in those possessions, they need to move the chains a few times and have something functionally happening to flip the field a little bit, give the defense a chance to have some rest on the sideline and keep this Buffalo offense from having so many opportunities to be out on the field.
Wags, I'm going to ask you a difficult question, but I want to get your impression of it. I thought last week the Packers' offensive line looked the best it's looked all year. It took 7 weeks, but it was the best it had looked. Left to right with Zach Tom and Elton Jenkins and Myers and of course Runyon and Josh Nijman. The Packers kind of, in my opinion, kind of broke glass in case of emergency a little bit and shifted the entire offensive line around. 4 of those 5 guys had not played the position that they were playing the previous week. Question is this. Offensive line, Wags, is a group of cohesion. It's a group where there's trust. You need to trust the guys to the left and the right of you. And the more you shake that up, the bigger the problems can be. We saw it, I thought, last year in the playoffs. Packers tried to rush some guys back, get some guys back. Football is about skill, but it's also about the ability to come together and play as a unit. One of the big issues with this team holistically this year has been that somebody is making a mistake, and causing difficulty. So all of that, by the way, is me of asking, At what point do we kind of stop this experiment of Bakhtiari coming back and leaving and coming back in and then not playing, and last week not being able to come in? Would it almost be better long term for this Packers team at this point to shut down David until they're absolutely sure he's going to be able to play consistently? Is that even an option at this point? Because I thought the unit played really well last week. You're going to hit your bumps in the road with a rookie left tackle, but long term, does that make the team better? I don't know. It's a hard question to ask, but it's worth asking at this point because the offensive line has looked considerably worse this year with some of the other iterations we've seen.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair question. I think that's something they do in the offseason. Honestly, I expect David Bakhtiari to be cut after the end of the season, no matter what happens the rest of the season. I think this is his last season as a Green Bay Packer. That's the way
honest.
it is. I don't know, Dean. It sounds great in theory to say, well, we shut him down for 3 more weeks and then he's good to go. But we've seen this back and forth. He's literally day to day. It's a chronic knee issue. Yeah. That's just what it is. And so, I mean, if he's good to play, I have a hard time saying we're not going to play him. He's looked good when he's been out there. So I respect the question. I don't think so, though. Just my opinion, and you might disagree with me. I get the idea of having continuity, but look, this team is better if David Bakhtiari is out there. If he's healthy enough to play on Sunday, you're going to play him at left tackle and ride this out as long as it goes. I think next year they'll move on, but. And then you're gonna get the continuity, and you're gonna go with a younger group, and but we'll know going into it that's what we're doing, and this isn't helping to have this back and forth clearly. But I think at this point, what the Packers coaching staff did is they bit the bullet, and they made the change, a permanent change of moving Yosh Nijman to right tackle. They moved Elgton Jenkins back to left guard. They didn't make those changes without really considering. They didn't want to do that until they knew David was good, and unfortunately the week they made the change, all of a sudden David's knee flares up. So I don't see them going back to what they were doing before. I think they've committed to this, and if David can play, great. If he can't, you know what? We got some good performance from Zach Tom. Hopefully he's able to keep it up. Got a lot of faith in him, but he's still not David Bakhtiari in terms of a track record and what he's done out there. So, I think it's just a luxury is the way we should look at it. If David's able to play on a given Sunday, and if he can't, the plan looks to be that it'll be Zach Tom filling in at left tackle moving forward.
Wags, Lee86 asked about the contract details. What happens if he's cut? That'll be for a different day, Lee. We'll have to look at that down the road. Probably in the offseason, we'll be talking an awful lot about it. But I think this week, Wags, with the offensive line running game, you mentioned the need to run the ball. Is this a week? A.J. Dillon hasn't looked like the same guy this year. But frankly, nobody's really looked like the same guy from a year ago to this year, even though it's a lot of the same faces on the team. But is this a week where Aaron Jones gets the lion's share? I mean, we talk about it week in and week out. It's maddening. But I did think last week, Jones at least got some touches. It wasn't exactly how I would have liked it all, but he was able to get some touches. I'm hopeful that the Packers continue to kind of ride the Aaron Jones train, but I'm kind of curious to see how this works out.
Yeah, it's just been difficult to figure out a way to balance and get A.J. Dillon in rhythm. But that's not my number one priority right now if I'm the Packers coaches. So we've been talking about this for weeks. Number one priority is to get Aaron Jones going, as you just said. And so I unfortunately, if A.J. Dillon's a little bit of a victim of the circumstances, if you will, that's just what it's going to have to be. Game flow is going to dictate this too. The Packers have been playing from behind in the second half. A.J. Dillon has been the hammer when the Packers have been ahead the last couple of seasons late in the game. And he's gotten a lot of his work in those situations, and those opportunities have been few and far between this season. So I think it's I don't think it's necessarily that AJ himself is doing anything wrong. I would have liked to see his ability to convert on some of these third or fourth and shorts that we've been passing the ball in the last few weeks. But, that notwithstanding, unfortunately, as much as it hurts me to say this, I've got to advocate for, if it means Aaron Jones is getting more touches, A.J. Dillon might have to settle for a few less because right now the cure to this Packer offense has to be Aaron Jones getting the ball as much as possible. So we'll see what happens. Aaron Jones obviously got very involved in the pass game last week. Didn't get a lot of carries as a runner, but 17 touches. I mean, that's getting closer to what I'd like to see from him every week. So I don't have a ton of complaints with the number of plays that the Packers actually had. If they can get to 60 plus plays, I'd like to see Aaron Jones getting 20 touches. And so let's figure out a way to make that happen first and foremost. So I don't know how to answer the question.
Right. It's hard
right now. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's just got to be I'm sorry, fortunately for A.J. Dillon, it's like the fourth priority as far as trying to fix this offense right now. But Dane, I do have a question for you. We have been hitting our head against a brick wall of trying to get this vertical pass game going. I saw a comment in the chat here. Bob Tunyon, 2 weeks ago, guy had his best game of his career in terms of the number of receptions in a single game. Last week wasn't quite as involved, but I think he ended up with 4 catches last week. So that's not a bad day at the office for Bob Tunyon. But I'm not sure if he might be a little bit more involved as well, just as a pressure release, particularly if the Bills pass rush is able to put some pressure on Aaron Rodgers. So I think Aaron Jones and Bob Tunyon might be 2 guys that the Packers and Aaron Jones are going to be looking at if things break down. But I also want to ask you if Christian Watson is able to come back this week. We could be lining up Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs on the outside and Sammy Watkins. So those could be our 3 wide receivers in a lot of the sets that we roll out there this week. We haven't been able to get a vertical passing game going. Could this be the week that, this be the week with some additional speed out there on the field that we are able to take some chances and actually connect on a few of those with Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson?
Well, it's a hell of a different look, right? It's a different look than we've had to have those 3 out there potentially at the same time. The first things first, be extremely nice to see Christian Watson run some wide receiver routes, and I'm hopeful that if he's able to get out there, I'm fine with a little bit of motion at the line. That's a fine and dandy look, but this is such a fast defense that they're going to be playing that if we're trying to go side to side against them, I fear that we're in for a huge wake up call. It's not going to be recipes for success. But if we can see Watson get out there and I'm seeing some comments in the chat, about quick slants and kind of doing some crossing routes. The Packers defense has gotten gutted sometimes in crossing routes this year. I'd love for the Packers to try to do the same against a fast team like this. I look at somebody like an Tremaine Edmonds, middle linebacker for the Bills Wags. He's a really fine inside linebacker, but he's also kind of a heavier plotting guy. He's a 250-pound dude. He's big, he's rangy, he's a classic inside linebacker, but if the Bills are trying to pass off receivers and Edmonds is in the middle of the field, I see a scenario where if it's Tunyon, if it's a Christian Watson, it's a Romeo Doubs, certainly I think that we can maybe have some success in some of these crossing routes. But also, you mentioned, Wags, the play action. If the Packers are able to utilize that a little bit more with the speed these 3 receivers have, if the Packers put a little bit more faith in a Christian Watson to run some of these streak routes, some of these other routes, they could find some success deep this week with these receivers. But all of that said, Aaron Rodgers needs to be able to make the throws, and that's something we've had a lot of problems with this year. I'm not sure if it's all thumb related or not, but his accuracy in the deep ball hasn't been there. If we can connect on one or two, it's amazing in the game of football how quickly momentum can seem to gain with a couple shots, a little bit of confidence. Right now, I think this Packers offense is not playing with a high level of confidence, but if we're able to get something going, you never know what can happen from there. So I do like the possibility of having 3 speedsters out there this week.
Yeah, look at us, Dane. I'm smiling because as bleak as things have been offensively, we're talking ourselves
talking
into an
in.
optimistic game plan. So run the ball, stick with it. Play action,
it's funny.
misdirection over the middle. A little help from the guys in the chat. Heck, we've got it.
We're doing it, guys.
Figure it out. Dane, I do want to ask too. So much attention has been on this past game and the timing and certainly just being able to get things going and getting on the same page. We haven't even talked about the quarterback. So let's talk a little bit about Aaron Rodgers. What do you make of his comments both after the game last week and then, everybody's just all over everything Aaron says as usual, but that they need to cut down on the mental errors. Like I have to be honest, personally, I don't disagree with what he's saying. I'm a little bit surprised that he's going out so publicly and saying it. Is that a sign of a guy that at his wit's end and he just like everything else I've been trying to do?
That's what I think.
Worked,
yes.
And so I'm just going to do this and see if guys respond.
Yeah.
But Dane, you tell me what
I do.
What do
you
you
hit it on the head. You hit it on the head. You said it. I mean, for him to say, I think guys that are making mistakes shouldn't be out there, or what I'm paraphrasing, but, he basically said, some guys maybe shouldn't be out there if they're making these mistakes. I mean, I promise you, the guys in the film room, they know who he's talking about, right? I mean, this is not a very, it's not very veiled. I think it's pretty clear, and maybe the average fan doesn't, but I promise you inside the locker room, those guys know what's going on here. So I think that probably behind closed doors, there's been a lot of conversation about what to do. And at this point, Rodgers is trying to just, nothing else has worked. Let's see if this sticks. And let's see if this message gets across to some of these guys. So I take it roughly at face value. I think he's frustrated. He has a certain expectation of how the game's supposed to be played. It served him extremely well in his career. Packers have won a Super Bowl based on that work ethic and that knowledge of the game and that meticulous attitude. And perhaps he's trying to set the tone with some of these guys that it needs to be at a different level than it's been so far this year.
Yeah, and it starts with the players, but is this a little bit of message to the coaching staff and front office as well?
Yeah.
Because
accountability,
we've been talking about it. Where's the urgency? Where's the accountability? And unfortunately, that was the tone that we came into the season with a lack of urgency and accountability. Yes. And it's going again this week. Because it looks like, based on Coach Bisaccia's presser today, Amari Rodgers is still going to be returning punts. So we can talk about that in a second. But I think, here's the thing. Everybody thinks that, these guys are in a locker room with hurt feelings, sitting in a circle singing Kumbaya. Right. I can promise you that every single NFL player, and, I'm not saying that there's not some insensitivity out there. I totally get it. And that they're not supporting each other as teammates, but they know who's doing the job and who isn't.
Yes.
And from the guy that's number 53 on the roster, and even some of the guys that have better job security that don't have to worry about making one mistake. This is a cutthroat business. If you go out there and you make a couple mistakes, some of these guys, they'll get cut the next week. So they know they're working their butts off to try to stick and make their NFL dream a permanent reality for as long as they possibly can. And meanwhile, we've got other guys out there that are just making the same mistakes over and over again. Where's the accountability? That's right. Not helping anything. That makes team morale worse. So I can promise you, just like you said, Dane, that even though it might seem like Aaron is really getting after his teammates and being a bad teammate. I bet the majority of the guys in the locker room are probably behind him for saying that. I'd like it to be kept inside closed doors, if you will. But unfortunately, I think it's gotten to the point where Aaron really felt like he needed to speak out.
I like it. Yeah, I like the fire. I mean, he cares. Let's be real. He didn't come back this year to lose a bunch of football games. He's trying to win football games. He's trying to do everything he can to get this team above water. I promise you that's what he's doing right now. And I also think he knows he has not been, he's subpar. These are not his standards for how he's played either. So I know there's frustration there, but he'll take accountability there as well. I love that he said it. I think it was a good leadership move, frankly, to put it out there and do it the way he did it.
Yeah, it's almost like I will say this. Whenever folks get down on Aaron and start second guessing him or the team, he usually responds. I don't know if it'll happen. I said it last week. I don't know if it'll happen. Maybe he's at a stage of his career where he no longer has that ability to respond and bring his level of play up to the incredible level that we know he's been capable of playing at. But I don't know. This is interesting. This scenario reminds me so much of last year when we went to Arizona. And granted, our team overall was playing better last year at that point in the season than they have been this year. But just no one really thought they had any chance of winning. Odds were stacked against them. And they went out and figured out a way. And I thought Aaron was really locked in, and he really was connected to a lot of guys that frankly had never been out on the field. And they were put into a situation where they had to go out and play basically the whole game. So could we see that again starting this week? That would be great to see. It still might not be enough for the Packers to somehow pull off a miracle and win at Buffalo. But I think at least it might be something that could get this season turned around. And that would be nice to see for sure. Dan, we are now on minute 46. I mentioned Amari Rodgers. I think we should really quickly talk special teams. We don't necessarily always devote a whole segment in these previews, but I really want to get your take. Go ahead.
Ben said accountable, right? Rodgers said accountable. I mean, who's more forward-facing than Amari Rodgers? He's had 5 fumbles in his career. He's putting the ball on the ground. I have no trust in him anymore. And I say it every week. I don't like calling for a guy's job, but this is a performance-based league, and unfortunately, he has not been able to perform over a year plus in this role, and he's not bringing anything else offensively that we've seen that's discernible, and it's harsh. I'm not trying to be a jerk, but it's a reality. I think the Packers need to replace Amari Rodgers because I'm just sure it's going to continue to happen, and it just takes the air out of the team's sails every single time a mistake happens. It's time. Amari Rodgers shouldn't even be on the team anymore.
Yeah, I mean, what's going on, Dane? For real,
I don't know.
They haven't even signed someone to the practice squad.
I don't get it.
That could potentially get some looks. Like it's just so puzzling. I mean, I think we're not expecting them to go out and pull a trade for a world-class punt returner. But I mean, my goodness, what is Goody doing? Like he has usually been very aggressive with updating the roster throughout the season, and front office has been extremely quiet so far this season. So I don't know what that says, but even if you're not going to replace Amari Rodgers right away, why are they not bringing some guys in for workouts, signing someone to the practice squad, giving them a long look, and then maybe in the next week or two you're in a better position to pull that trigger and make that change? Is
it draft capital? Is it Goody being afraid to admit a mistake? Because I mean, I remember a couple of years ago, Darius Shepard got cut, punt returner. He fumbled once. And they cut him. He was the undrafted kid out of North Dakota State that I thought looked really good in camp, right? And he got cut, and that was it. and went to the practice squad, had a cup of coffee, and, he was gone. And, Amari Rogers seemed to have 9 lives so far. And I don't quite understand it, other than maybe the draft capital the Packers are sticking around. But even to your point, why not get a guy on the practice squad, call him up for a week or two, and try to get this thing settled a little bit? But the Packers seem to be completely dead set on sticking with Amari Rogers. But I truly, truly do not understand at this point what the case may be for that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's nothing much else to say, I guess. So, Dane, let's get into our X Factor predictions and score predictions. Of course, this segment every week is brought to you by Leap Spirits. Leap Spirits has Leap Vodka as well as Leap and Lemonade. And, of course, you can find Leap Spirits anywhere in Wisconsin. Go to leapspirits.com, click on Find Leap Vodka to find it in a retail store or a restaurant near you. So, Dane, I'm going to let you lead off this week. Who do you have as the first guy that jumps out to you as an X Factor?
How about this, Wags? Aaron Rodgers is my offensive X Factor. My Leap Spirits offensive X Factor of the week. If we get Aaron Rodgers back on track, we're winning the football game. We're going to figure it out, because you said it. Rodgers, with his back against the wall, figures it out for this team. He has not played up to his standards this year. Aaron Rodgers, 4-time MVP, Super Bowl champion Aaron Rodgers, quarterback of the Green Bay Packers, is my Leap Spirits offensive X Factor for this week.
Yeah, I will certainly allow it. The way that this season has been going, I can't even disagree with you at all, Dane. I'm gonna go with Romeo Doubs. He's been quiet the last couple of weeks, and I think perhaps with another week of practice for Sammy Watkins, and I think we're going to get Christian Watson back this week. That just puts a lot more size and physicality and speed on the field with Romeo Doubs. And so even though it's going to hurt not to have Allen Lazard out there, I really like knowing that he's probably not going to be out there all week, gets the extended time. Last time we saw Romeo Doubs and Aaron Rodgers, knew that they were going to have to work together quite a bit. Romeo Doubs had the best game of his young career. And so I think this is a week where we could see some similar production, and that he might be able to give the Packers a little bit of life in this passing offense. As crazy as it is to say, against what might be the best team in the NFL, I'm going to go with the young rookie Romeo Doubs, and I think this is a week that we finally get Aaron Rodgers to get in sync against some of these young receivers. So, Dane, on the defensive side of the ball, who are you looking at there?
Yeah, good question. I'll tell you what, I'm going to go with another big name player. My Leap Spirits X Factor on the defensive side is going to be Jaire Alexander. Can he stop Stephon Diggs? Can he step and do the things that he needs to do against a world-class wide receiver? We trust Jaire Alexander. I completely believe in everything this year they've been able to do with him in the last few weeks, even though the scoreboard hasn't ended up the Packers' favor. I think Jaire Alexander deserves as much responsibility. He's earned it over the course of his career. He's my X Factor on defense, Wags. Leap Spirits X Factor, because if he can shut down Diggs, we can spend a lot more attention on player like Josh Allen, who's going to need all the attention we can give him.
Yeah, I think that's a great call out, and I'm going to stick with a guy that we mentioned and talked about a little bit earlier, and that's going to be Kingsley JJ Enagbare.
Yeah,
I think if he can get in there and continue to make some impact in the snaps that he's able to get, that could be significant for this Packer defense. As we said, Josh Allen has been protected better than any quarterback in the NFL to this point this season. So, the headliners obviously are Rashawn Gary and Preston Smith on the outside. Maybe, as you said, Quay Walker gets unleashed and gets called on to rush after Josh Allen a little bit. But I think a guy like Enagbare could quietly help this defense quite a bit if he's able to make some impact plays in the reps that he's out there.
Love it. No, Wags, I love that. And it's a good choice. I love the Enigbari shout. And I also love the costume ideas that David's got for us. He's saying, Wags, for you could be McCready from The Thing or Alan from The Hangover. I believe you've done that before, if I'm not mistaken. And for me, Dawson from Dawson Creek or Ferris Bueller. I like these. These are very good Halloween costumes, so we love it.
Yeah, I've lost a bet and had to go as a name in the world, but nonetheless, I've heard that comparison before, so I will humbly accept and go in that direction. But Dane, score predictions.
Yes.
I am going to leave.
I think we lost Wags here. So I'm going to wait for him to jump back on the podcast, folks, but feel free to throw in your score predictions if you have any at all. Throw them in the comments. We will read out any score predictions you have. And Wags is back. Wags, we lost you for a second. Is that an ominous sign for what may come this week? Do you want me to go first? Do you want to go first on predictions?
I mean, it is kind of ominous, isn't it? That's freaky.
Yes.
We've had connection issues before, but I get completely cut off as I'm about to predict the Packers to lose, which I never do.
Never.
So, what does that tell you? I think is that actually a good sign?
It's a sign.
Come with us, Dane.
It's a sign.
I'm flipping it. The
Yes.
Packers, unexpectedly, as the biggest underdog in Aaron Rodgers' career, going to Buffalo Sunday night. Get the comeback win, 27-24. Mason Crosby with the game-winning kick. I don't know why I'm predicting this, Dane. It makes no sense other than just the spooky Halloween season thing that just happened. I was about to predict a Packer loss. I get completely cut off. You know what? I think that has a bigger sign. So Packers win 27-24. Don't worry, folks. I'm not going to start predicting losses now.
Wags, I've got chills. I'm rubber stamping it. 24-23. Packers find a way. Let's get spooky season in Buffalo, baby.
All right. I know we're going to be eating those words, but you know what? Let's have some fun.
Let's have some fun.
There's no expectations, and there's no reason based on how the Packers have played for us to be making these crazy predictions, other than the fact that we are going to stand with this Packer team through thick and thin, and that's just what we do here on Lombardi's Legends. So, folks, thanks so much for joining us here this evening. This was a lot of fun.
So fun.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we'll be back next week on Monday to do a recap. And man, oh man, Dane, wouldn't that be quite something if we're able to be correct and get this one pulled off. So any closing thoughts here before we sign off?
Predictions in the board, 26-23 in the comments. So let's do it, man. How about it? Let's will ourselves to victory. I'm ready for some Packer football. Sunday night football, national TV spotlight. Let's shock the NFL world. Aaron Rodgers, go have a day.
Absolutely. As always, be legendary and go Pack.
Go Pack, go.
Every year I know we gonna go hard. We been that team ever since Bart started. All my cheese heads go Pack go. Ain't showing no mercy, cutting no slack, no. I ain't a bad sport and I'll even wish it.